This is interesting because I think that Manny Diaz is a good coach. And I think that's a general consensus from people who aren't rock dwellers. So I sit here on this Tuesday night and I say, Will, like, I don't know if Duke is going to be able to maintain. I think there's going to be a little bit of a fall off. I don't know if it means that, I think it's just going to be due to what they lost and how much they lost.
I agree.
So I like what Duke did in bringing Manny Diaz in. He was a good coach at Miami. If your barometer for how good a coach is just how many national championships he wins, well, then there's only one good coach every year. I mean, there are good coaches that do really well at where they are. So I like what Duke brings. They got that over under win total of 6.5. The biggest question mark, though, is you lose Mike Elko, you lose Tyler Santucci, who's now the DC, obviously, over there at Georgia Tech, but you lose Riley Leonard, and it feels like there's just has to be natural progression. There's got to be a little bit of a drop off, Will.
Yeah, no doubt. You also lose your leading rusher last year, Jordan Waters. But
Yeah.
to fill that Riley Leonard size hole at quarterback, they bring in Malik Murphy, really good athlete from Texas. Really a guy that I looked at as kind of a coup to come out of the portal for Duke. Kind of a guy you didn't really expect to hit the portal, but when you think about it, not really surprised with the quarterback room Texas has. But a
Mm-hmm.
lot of question marks around Murphy. Hadn't played a ton. So what's it going to look like? We know the offense they're going to run. Manny Diaz brings Jonathan Brewer over from SMU. There's history there. Jonathan Brewer was senior offensive quality control coach for Manny Diaz at Miami under offensive coordinator, now SMU head coach Rhett Lashley. They're going to come out and run the football. They're going to go up tempo. They're going to try to run it down your throat, and just play smash mouth. And I think that fits
Yeah.
well with Manny Diaz. You know that defense is going to be good. His defense was good at Miami every year. So you know the Duke defense will be good. They've got good playmakers on defense. They were able to keep their leading tackler Trey Freeman in there, so will be a big help having him back. That's about it I've got. He brings in Jonathan Patkey for his defensive coordinator from Texas State. Texas State, shockingly, were second in the country in tackles for loss with 8.3 a game, ninth in sacks, a little over 3 a game. So some really good numbers. Patkey also worked for Diaz at Miami.
Yeah.
And coach linebackers there for them. But Duke could go a couple ways. I mean, if they hit on Malik Murphy, if they can find a running back, if Brewer can install an offense that works for them, and Manny Diaz and Patkey can get that defense right, I think they could go 8-4. I think they've got a pretty easy schedule. That October 5th game that everybody's got scheduled is going to be one of their tougher games. They also have to go to
Yeah.
Miami and to NC State. Those will be tough for them too. But I think their schedule's pretty easy. I think they could make things work. I'm going to put their floor at 6-6. There will be some drop off, I think, but if things go right, they could be 8-4.
Yet the back half of the schedule is what worries me when you look at, the first 5 games they have, or 6 games. We'll go those first 6 games. I feel confident that they can start off, 4-0. They've got Elon, Northwestern, UConn, and Middle Tennessee State. But then you host North Carolina. That feels like a pretty big litmus test, for what you're going to be able to accomplish. And what does this Manny Diaz team really look like? Like, what does the identity look like of what they want to do? And then they go on the road to Georgia Tech, which, last time they went there, that was an overtime game. Those two teams, I feel like it's always a back and forth battle with what they're kind of able to do.
A lot of
Those two
smarts on
games
the
could
field at that game.
determine. Oh, yeah, a ton of
A
smart
lot of
people on
brain
this game.
power.
A lot of brain power there. North Carolina, Georgia Tech might be the turning point of the season. If you can split those and you find yourself 5-1 heading into a stretch of hosting Florida State, hosting SMU, and then back-to-back road matchups against Miami and NC State, there's a path to getting to my ceiling, which is 8-4. If you can get there. Now, we're talking about this, and people might laugh. Ceiling, we're talking about everything hits. Like, we're talking about the loss of Riley Leonard. Maybe it's felt, but Malik Murphy shows that he is maybe that guy, and he can lead you and be a great quarterback for this. We're talking about a couple things that kind of have to hit. If those do, it's not out of the question, that they can win those first 5 games. And then I think they can beat Wake Forest. You're talking about that 6 wins. Can you pick off 2 of Georgia Tech, Florida State, SMU, Miami, NC State, and Virginia Tech? I think you can if we're talking about a scenario where
I think
they're really gelling.
Yeah, I think their schedule sets up good for that too. They got a bye week coming off Georgia Tech, going into Florida State. A lot can happen in a bye week in college. Your quarterback can figure something out, and if Murphy kind of just does enough to keep them competitive and win them a few games before that, he very well could take off in that bye week.
Yeah, and Dr. Bob
Comes at a
Plume's a
really
good
good time
point.
for them.
It does. Both of the bye weeks are a really good time for them. He says, don't count out Grayson Loftus in the battle with Malik Murphy. That's very true. I mean, Loftus is a guy that I think the staff is impressed with. And look, my name's not Bruce, but Jonesy thinks it is. Dr. Bob also says the infrastructure in Durham is significantly better than it was a decade ago. And he goes Dr.
I
Bob
don't,
Duke versus GT, the Dr. Bob Bowl. Would that
yeah, Doctor Bob.
technically,
I don't think there's any doubt. The
how
infrastructure
does
is way better.
Dr. Bob, back to your question. How does Tulane figure into this, by the way? Because I know you're sweet on Tulane too. So um hey, look, we appreciate it. True Seminole new fan, hit that like button. Make sure you share it with your friends. Okay, so I've got it at 8-4. Will for
That's
my
where I'm
floor.
Mhm.
If quarterback is a black hole for you, it could get ugly. I'm gonna go. I'm gonna go 4-8. Like I think
Ooh,
quarterback is such an important position that you think you have settled. If it's not, I'm gonna go a down season and things go really bad. 4-8, I think is
yeah.
a floor for Duke in 2024.
No, I could see it. I just have faith that Manny Diaz will have a strong defense that'll keep him in games. And I mean, I feel like I'm an expert on the Gus Malzahn, Rhett Lashley offense. They're going to run the ball. That's going to be their MO. If they can't run the ball, nothing else will work.
Yeah,
So they'll try to take care of the ball and run it. And if that works for them, even if it doesn't work for them, I think they can do enough to make a bowl game, which I feel like for Manny Diaz, you really got to do because you know your reputation as a head coach is not too great, and it's not all his fault. But he's going to have to find a way to have some success early on, especially now. Duke fans, they've had a little taste of success. They're going to want to keep it, and
yeah.
rightfully so.
And Dr. Bob mentioned this. I think it has shown that you can be a consistent winner at Duke, and Elko
Mhm.
showed you that. And so, look, they didn't. You kind of look at the hire they made. They went to go get Manny Diaz, Will, because say, hey, we want a guy that we think can help even take us further. Like I'm not saying he's a better coach than Mike Elko, but they feel like, hey, we're picking up steam. Let's don't just go hire necessarily a young guy that may take a couple years. Let's go get a guy that we think can help us win and keep on track. That's what they think can happen. I can see it, and we'll see obviously kind of what happens with Duke there. But that's the Duke Blue Devils